Hi, and welcome to the Dentro Talent podcast. I am here with Aidan Harding, who is currently a CTO. Aidan, great to have you chatting to me today. I will start out just by asking you a little bit about yourself and give us some background, give us some detail on your career history to date.
Right. Thanks for having me on here, Rick. So my career, I'll go all the way back to university because there are not that many steps in it. So I studied computer science and then I did a PhD in computer science, which kind of sets a technical path, I guess. And after that, I worked for a
Yeah.
company called Altera, who are a FPGA company, so hardware stuff. Took a bit of a career break to go and race mountain bikes around the world for a couple of years. And in the course
Okay.
of doing that, bumped into a guy who was involved in Salesforce consulting just at the point where I was running out of money. And so I joined the Salesforce consulting world for a good few years. And
Yeah.
currently I'm at a Salesforce ISV. So we're making apps to sell on top of Salesforce. And we're making a product to do process mining on Salesforce. So deriving what processes are going on in your business by looking at how your data is changing inside Salesforce.
Okay. And what's been the journey for you in terms of making that not just making the transition from being hands on, but more, I guess, so about the company sizes and the type of role you've had to play in those businesses.
Yeah, so the first Salesforce consultancy, when I joined, there were four of us, and I was the only person with development background. So kind of by default, everything to do with development. I guess that's probably a common scenario for companies of that size. And then as you grow, there's a bit of a fork in the road of all the technical leadership things. Is that something that you can do, something that you're interested in doing? And growing that team and turning it into something entirely different is a real kind of journey. And as people join you on it as well, you need to find leaders within that technical team to help that grow in a scalable way. And yeah,
And
so
and as you've sorry, I was just going to ask you, as you've kind of scaled these teams and brought new people in, um, going from that kind of, okay, I'm the technical guy,
mhm.
to, okay, I'm now the people that people look to for leadership and steering that technical function. How has that changed you and your outlook? And lots of questions in here, but what's been the biggest hurdle you've had to mount and get over to make that transition?
Hiring people and making them successful, I think, is actually really difficult, especially when you're a small company. You think, we need to grow, we need to hire more people, but how could I actually do that well? And I, what I tried to do to be able to get to the point where we could get people involved in the company well was try and sort of establish almost like rituals that the company go through that make something coherent for someone to join. Like we always have a weekly meeting where we try and advance everyone's technical skills, take a step back from the day to day, and we just have this meeting where we're
Okay.
just working on improving ourselves. And things like that set a tone within a team. And having
Yeah.
documentation of how you do things means that when people join, they can learn things for themselves, not constantly have to be relying on you. And sort of a big part of that process of stepping up is creating the artifacts around you of documentation, videos, tool usage, whatever it is, so that people don't have to be constantly asking you. And also other people, as the team grows, have that same knowledge that you had that can kind of push into other people.
Yeah. And I guess as part of that, there is, as the team grows and as you have to relinquish some of that responsibility, a lot of people that I've spoken to who've made the transition from very much hands-on, perhaps as you were, kind of sole technical person in a business, a lot of people have really struggled to relinquish that control and pass things down to people, and I think it's a key learning that you kind of have to make pretty quickly when you
Mm.
are stepping up in a startup or scale up business, because otherwise your team aren't going to be engaged and your team aren't going to learn because
Yeah,
you're still running around wearing a million and one hats doing everything for them.
yeah,
And I think that's a really, really important part of scaling a small to medium sized technical business.
yeah, definitely. And one of the easy ways to scale at that sort of size is to only hire senior people who don't need that level of involvement from you all the time. They can just kind of slot in and start working. And there becomes a risk around there of, are you a coherent team within a company, or are you a collection of individuals working on your own separate streams within this umbrella of the company? And the path that we went through was hiring senior people in that way, because it was sort of too small to start creating all this structural stuff. If there's only two or three of you, it still
Mm.
seems crazy to have to create those things. But then as you step up to the
Yeah.
next size, then you have to start to put these things in and also start to educate those people that you hired in as senior people to say, okay, well, now you also need to be able to lead things. You need to be able to explain your thoughts and designs so that you can also pass stuff to other people, so that we can share the work and actually work together in a more integrated way rather than sort of all be going in our own separate channels.
Yeah, and that comes down to that comes down to the leader of that function, doesn't it? And
Mm-hmm.
that again, making that transition, the kind of classic phrases of kind of it's lonely at the top and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Your job role in a company um, changes, and some people don't particularly like that change. So how did you cope with the demands of leading people as opposed to being in the weeds and being in the detail?
I was lucky enough to want to step into those leadership shoes. I don't think everyone necessarily is. Certainly, my observation of the people that I've brought into teams, not all of them have wanted to do that. And so you've got to
Mm.
be honest with yourself if you're an early employee in a startup. Of the default route may be that you go into a leadership role, but it might not actually be what you want to do. And there might be a time where moving to another company where you can stay on a purely technical track is the thing to do. And I think you've also got to be honest about what level of technical involvement you want. So I get a lot out of continuing to be doing the technical work, not because I don't think other people can do it, but it's the reason why I got into this stuff. And it's really motivating to be involved
Mm.
in that level. And so you just end up having to make these choices about how you're going to spend your time, spend a lot more time staring at Google Calendar, trying to figure out where am I going to allocate my efforts this week? Because if you're in that company and everyone knows that you're capable of doing a lot of things, they're going to want to pull you into a lot of things. And you need to sort of figure out when to say no or when to be involved at the beginning and then let other people take it from there.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think there are lots of people that help to shape your journey from in any career. But do you feel you've been given some sound advice on your journey to a CTO position? And what do you think is that kind of nugget of advice that perhaps always sticks in your mind as you've made that transition and that jump to a CTO role?
The thing that comes to mind for me is the thing that comes to me in terms of advice. I don't know where you are with language on this podcast. That
It's fine. It's
a,
fine, honestly.
a manager when I was at Altera said to me, which Altera is a very big company, like a Silicon Valley,
Mm.
large organization, and he said that his role was to act as an umbrella for all the shit that comes down from the rest of the company. And I actually,
Yeah.
looking back, the advice that I took from that is not to be that umbrella, but to actually go to the source and stop it from raining shit in the first place. Like as you get more senior, that really
Yeah.
you should be making the weather, you should be changing those things, not just sort of grumbling and trying to protect your team, but trying to set a more positive path for people so that they're not
Yeah.
just dealing with poor decisions and intrusions and all the other stuff that might come with a business. You can actually, you're in a position to make those changes, so make those changes.
Yeah. And you know what? I can hear at least two of my managers in my early career talking to me about, oh, the crap I have to take from the board or blah blah
Yeah,
blah. You guys don't
yeah,
know the half of it, and all that sort of stuff. And
yeah.
I think that you can't share everything, like everything
Mm,
with your people, with your teams. Um, but I think that philosophy of stopping it at source is something that's missed a lot along the way, and the umbrella just gets bigger and bigger and bigger
mm.
until it eventually just collapses. And that's
Yeah,
yeah, that's when it really hits the fan, right? Okay.
yeah,
Um,
exactly. And
so it sounds like
yeah, it was. I was going to say one of the last team that I was leading in a sort of consulting role was a team of principal consultants. So they were sort of leaders within their own technical areas within the company, and that sense of you don't get to complain about the weather, you should be making the weather was one of the things that I was really instilling to them because it is so easy to complain about stuff. And I don't think that they were complaining to the people that they were supposed to be showing leadership to, but when they were complaining to me, it was often like, well, okay, that's a thing. Go, how can you deal with it? How can you turn that into something that's not going to be still bugging you next month, next year?
yeah, yeah, um, yeah. Go and figure stuff out and make things better for you, but also for your teams. Um,
Hmm.
it sounds like you're. It sounds like you've taken to kind of a leadership role in technology pretty pretty well. Like, I'm sure there's been huge challenges along the way, but you know it is sometimes a tough transition, to relinquish that control, to not have your eyes on absolutely everything. Um, what does your look like now, and what would you say are kind of the core principles that you've maintained in how to build a culture and how to maintain it?
Yeah, it's I think that thing I mentioned before about rituals is very important, and I think there's sort of
Mm.
there's the everyone's heard the move fast and break things um, thing, and I'm very much read books and don't break things. Sort of if people are
Yeah,
taking a step back, like there's a constant swirl of technological change, and I think there's a trap within technology of there's always something novel to learn about. But quite often, these new things that are coming out are just echoes of stuff that was invented in the 70s. And if we're reading books and things, that helps us to take a longer view of what's going on and try and make better decisions and pause before we do things. And if we can make a team that moves more slowly and has less rework to do, then that team's a lot more effective. And so we really do try and have this emphasis of having a learning culture where, you know, when there are mistakes, we try and figure out what we can do to prevent that mistake in the future. Sometimes you just put your hand up and say, well, that was just bad luck. And, you know, we took all reasonable precautions.
Yep.
Or maybe there's something that we can do to systematize a solution to that. You know, there's an extra thing we need to think about at the design stage. And one of the things you can do as a leader is share your mistakes. If you're still involved in the building of stuff, you can talk to your team about this thing didn't work out. That's why it didn't work out. That's what we're going to do about this. And sort of model the behaviors that you want
Yeah.
to see from the people inside your team. And then they will feel better about sharing their mistakes, sharing their early thoughts about things. I think agile software designs become very kind of far from where it started, but where it started was about trying to get feedback early and creating a good culture within a team where everyone trusts each other enough to share their early thoughts, gets to some of the things agile people were trying to get to of the decisions we make earlier are the impactful ones because they flow on through to everything else. And if you've got that sense of trust, then you can share it around the
Yeah.
team. If you've got that sense of trust with your customers, then you can share it with them and sort of know that they're not going to think less of you. They're going to think more because they're involved in sort of co-creating a great product.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a really important message in there around that kind of continuous improvement and continuous learning for individuals,
Hmm.
because, you know, as we both know, tech moves faster than any other sector, and people need to feel like they are growing and learning to keep themselves engaged in a business and in a role. So, what's this is like a, $1 million question, but what's next? Like, where are we headed from a technical standpoint? What does, I'm loath to say kind of the next 5 years because we'll be here for hours, but what do you feel is kind of on the horizon that you're trying to maybe give your people exposure to or thinking about, or maybe you're kind of learning and reading up yourself about in preparation for it?
It's really hard to not say AI. I mean, it's kind of
Yeah.
everywhere. But I think it's not really clear to anyone where that's going. The expectation of getting a big return from AI is really high, but it's still a lot of the time it feels like a solution looking for a problem that we can generate stuff with LLMs, but is it right? What level of expertise do you need to be able to check the output of an LLM? And then is that actually giving you any benefit if you need really experienced people to be able to check those things? And something that I think is that some of the preparatory work that people are doing at the moment to organize their data in a better way is going to be one of the things that shakes out to be useful after the sort of bubble of overexcitement about AI has died down a little bit. There'll be lots of companies that suddenly have more data than they ever had, more organized data than they ever had. And there's a good opportunity there to use, again, techniques that we've had for many years of data science techniques that now that we've got more data, more powerful computing resources, then classic machine learning algorithms and statistics on that data are going to give people new insights into businesses that they didn't have before. And yeah, I wonder if that will be the legacy of the current bubble. And I think there's a lot to be done there. And I've kind of bet on that myself because that is where our company Processity is being as well. Is we're looking to gather more data, crunch that data, and
Yeah,
yeah, I can see people starting
yeah,
to do it as well.
yeah. I think it's going to take a while, really, for people to figure out the real benefit of AI in their business and how best to use it, how to maximize it, and also where not to use it. Because I think there's a risk of saying, oh well, we
Yeah,
can get AI to do that, we can get something to do that, and actually, as you said, you will end up kind of almost doubling up on those tasks by getting a machine to do it and then a human to do it, because there's got to be checks and what have you. So that's perfect. That's really insightful. Look, thank you for taking the time to have a chat with me, and yeah, we'll hopefully speak again soon.
great. Thanks, Rick. It's been fun.